To say that it has been a wild few days would be an understatement, but the Blue Bloods are back to offer a small distraction from all the craziness of the world. College football in the sports world may be on hold, but there are still plenty of storylines that need to be talked about and addressed. We kick off the show by talking about how this recent pandemic will affect recruiting and spring practice for NCAA football. Then we move on to talk about whether Jamie Newman, the transfer from Wake Forest, will be the missing piece for the Georgia Bulldogs this upcoming season. Then we debate who is really the best running back in the upcoming NFL draft. And we wrap it all up by speculating whether Drake Maye's flip to North Carolina from Alabama offers evidence that schools and coaches across the country are not intimidated by Nick Saban on the recruiting trail anymore. We have a lot to debate, and we have a packed show, so let's kick it off. Start out talking about, the thing that I know is on everyone's mind right now. The country has been devastated by the recent pandemic called the coronavirus, and the sports world has been put on hold for the foreseeable future. And that also includes college football. The NCAA suspended all athletic activity. The latest news says until April 15th, which means spring practice and spring games had to be canceled. And this past Friday, March 13th, the NCAA made the decision to also put a halt on all recruiting activities. So this is going to have major ramifications across the country for many teams and many high school players that are coming into their senior year. So Brandon, how do you see the recruiting cycle being altered moving forward, and how do teams properly prepare for the season after missing weeks of spring practice that builds experience and chemistry for these younger players and new teammates?
Yeah, well, like you said, it's definitely going to be thrown off. Everything's being put on hold for right now, and I think it's for a good reason. I'm not the deciding factor here, but we have to watch out for our athletes. We have to watch out for the fans. We have to watch out for everybody. But yeah, things aren't going to operate like they normally would, because this isn't a situation like we normally see. So, spring games are being canceled. Some of them are. Like you said, operations aren't set to start again until April 15th, and that might be being generous, because I assume they're probably going to reevaluate this closer to then. It might get pushed back even more. So we don't really know. We don't really know what to look out for, because we've at least in recent years, since the since the NCAA was formed, we haven't really faced a problem like this. We haven't seen a pandemic like this, and it's been a while. And so I can't tell you really exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be interesting to see. And your heart just has to go out to these players that have been training their entire lives to get here. But at the same time, what really are you going to do? I think the NCAA is handling this, and I'm the first person to criticize the NCAA. Everyone knows that. Everyone who listens to this podcast knows that. Everyone in the world probably knows it. But I think they're doing the right thing here. I think hold off until April 15th, reevaluate, go from there. If it puts the season off track, so be it. It sucks, but the situation as a whole sucks too.
Yeah, I think we're both on the same page with that. This is a serious thing that we have to think of the bigger picture here rather than this minute focus on sports. I think as bad as it all is as much as we all love sports, it's the College Football podcast, we all love it. We all are probably sports fans for other sports, but the NCAA had to do this. The NBA, I give them props, set the precedent. All other major sports are canceled. I think the only sport that's still going on is UFC. That's their decision. But they made the best decision for the safety of their players, student athletes, coaches, recruits, everything. But, I think we can kind of speculate on how it's going to affect it, because I think this is really, really going to affect the recruiting cycle. I don't think it's going to affect teams such as Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, those teams that have that national recognition. But I think it's going to hurt these lower level schools in stealing recruits. We always see schools like, let's just say Houston, when they seem to steal a recruit every now and then out of the top 10. I don't think you're going to see that as much, because I think a school like Alabama is much more likely to recover from this period of no contact outside of like an AAC program like Cincinnati or Houston. I think players are going to be less likely to commit during the early signing period too. I think some of these players are going to hold off till the National Signing Day in February of 2021 to sign their letters of intent. They're going to want to take those visits. They're going to want to have that experience. They're going to want to know these coaching staffs. The players that are dead set on enrolling early will probably sign in the early signing period. But I think last year we saw the early signing period really take a lot of the big recruits away. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. And I think the recruiting battles are going to be absolutely intense. I mean, I think these teams are going to be fighting tooth and nail to get these recruits in, because I think me and you both agree this is a time that a lot of these recruits do take those unofficial visits to kind of build those relationships. So these coaches are going to be in a tighter window trying to get as many players into their program as possible.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah, and it really is going to hurt the smaller schools, or the smaller programs, at least in the upcoming weeks, in the upcoming months, maybe even the upcoming seasons. So that's definitely a bummer for them.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of the junior days are around this time where they bring in a lot of the people that might not be able to sign in the 2021 recruiting class, but this is a big time period for those 2022 recruits.
Yeah, and so the point, I think that, I mean, you may have said it and I may have just overlooked it, but one of the points that you may have been trying to make is that, they're not these players that are going to sign somewhere who've gotten offers from bigger schools, maybe to be second or third string for a little while, are going to pass up on the smaller schools where they could have started right away. Because, I mean, if you strictly received offers from, let's say, Auburn, Alabama, then maybe, you were going to be like a third string player, either one of those schools, and then you received offers from, like, let's say, like Florida International, South Alabama, and Southern Miss, but you could start at any of those three schools. Where are you going? I mean, if you can't visit any of these schools, where are you going to go? I mean, I know where I'm going. I'm going to go to the big name program, because in your future, even while you're there, you can be able to say, hey, I play football for a D1 Power 5 school. Whereas maybe if you would have visited the Southern Miss, the South Alabama, or the Florida International, you would have visited there. You would have seen how much their coaches care about the players. You would have seen how close the team is. And maybe that would have flipped your thoughts. You go there, they can talk you into it. They can be more persuasive. But if you're just passed a piece of paper that says, hey, there's these 5 schools that want you, you're going to go to one of these Power 5 schools, right?
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. Like I said before, I mean, I just don't think so. These smaller schools have to build a special type of relationship with these recruits. They can't just come in, and they don't have Nick Saban with these championship rings laid out on the table. They're going to have to sell these kids on the vision of that program. And without this contact, you can't sell vision, over the phone. And I think they even banned over the phone contact for a period of time. I think this is like a new dead period per se for recruiting. But, one other thing I kind of want to address is, what about recruits like Zachary Evans, who decided to push back their commitment? I think he said he planned on committing this month, early April, but with this dead period, teams can't contact him, let him visit. This kid has been a question mark. No one really knows where his head's at. So those teams that are recruiting this kid cannot feel comfortable with this. I mean, am I right? I mean, even with normal contact, he was still hard to read. Could you imagine if you just let him be by himself with no contact, what's going to come of it next?
Oh, dude, that'd be nuts. That would just be absolutely insane, because, I mean, this kid just might not – he may not go anywhere now, I have no idea.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, I tried to look it up, and I couldn't really find anything. When does he have to make a decision to be eligible to play next year?
I'm not really sure. And especially with the circumstances that are happening now, we may not have an answer to that, That may just be something
that's very true. Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. I think he's a very weird scenario, and I think if he could have looked into the future and saw this coming, he probably would have already committed. And I think he said it was down to Tennessee and Florida. So these schools have to be biting their nails, because, even though it's a dead period, I mean, there's teams still contacting recruits. Let's not all play stupid. So if a team gets into his ear, we can have a team come out of nowhere for this kid. And even though hasn't handled his recruitment, in the way I would have, he's still a monster. And I think he could start at any school in the country, in my opinion.
Right. No, he's definitely still one of the, I mean, obviously one of the top running backs in the country. This guy's insane. Yeah. But any school would be lucky to have him, I think. Well, be lucky to have his talents.
His talent, maybe not his attitude. But the last thing before we move on is, this does have recruiting impacts, but spring football practices are huge for upcoming seasons. I mean, it's huge for young teams with a new quarterback, a new head coach. Teams like Clemson, Trevor Lawrence is going to be his third year starting. He already has his wide receivers that they have their chemistry. They have the offensive system down. They know the environment. But what about a team like Oregon? Just lost their starting quarterback who started for, I believe, 4 straight years. 4 new offensive linemen on that front, and there's just no chemistry, no time to practice together. And then teams like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Florida State that are implementing new systems with new head coaches in a completely new place. I mean, this has to be devastating for programs like that.
Yeah, it definitely is. You have no time to implement this before the season. That's assuming the season starts in August like it's supposed to. But because like I've said plenty of times during the segment, we just don't know. I mean, we don't know if this is going to still be a huge pandemic. Then that's the first thing. The second thing is we don't know how this was going to handle it. They may end up pushing everything back, because they may realize, hey, it's really not fair for these kind of programs or whatever. And so, I mean, because we like to say, hey, it's just a game, whatever. I mean, to some of these people, to the coaches, this is their livelihood. They don't do well this season, they're fired basically, and they're left without a job. I mean, so this is people's livelihood at some point, and we have to look at it that way. So we just don't know how it's going to pan out. But yeah, I mean, assuming that things do start on time, assuming that I guess we get past this. Then it's definitely going to be a disadvantage to the coaches, to the programs that are implementing new types of things in their with their team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be an interesting thing. But so let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. Let's get some real football talk, something to get you guys' minds off of this. We're going to move on to Georgia, the program. This has been a program in the national spotlight. Jake Fromm has been the starter for the Bulldogs since 2017 when he took over for an injured Jacob Eason in the first game of the season. Fromm has had a successful career. He led the Bulldogs to a national championship appearance in 2017 and 3 consecutive SEC championship games where he was 1-2 in those games. Fromm has finally decided to take his talents to the NFL, and Georgia dipped into the transfer portal and found Wake Forest quarterback Jamie Newman. Newman only had 1 full season as a starter for the Demon Deacons and put up over 2,800 yards and 26 touchdowns, but he struggled with turnovers with 11 interceptions. Many experts are beginning to wonder when Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs will finally get over the hump and win a championship. So I ask you, Brandon, is Newman the missing piece for the Bulldogs? And is he what they were missing to win their first championship since 1980?
No. I mean, that's my short answer is no. I do think he's a great quarterback. I really do. I think he's a fantastic athlete. I mean, anyone who watched Wake Forest play this past season should be able to recognize that. I mean, like you said, he passed for almost 2,900 yards last season. He has 26 touchdowns. But his completion rates, it doesn't really worry me that much. I mean, it's a 61% completion rate. That's pretty good. But if Georgia couldn't get it done with Jacob Eason, if they couldn't get it done with Jake Fromm, I don't think they get it done with Jamie Newman. I really don't. I don't really know why, other than the stats. And the stats look pretty good. I think it's kind of a step back. If you look at this past season at Jake Fromm, I don't think it's a step back. I think almost anything's a step forward from that. But, you look at the years that Georgia, or the year that Georgia made the national championship, and you're like, wow, I mean, that was pretty. I mean, that was a great performance by everybody on the team. I don't think that Jamie Newman would have won that game for them. I don't think that anybody was going to beat Alabama that season. I don't really think Jamie Newman keeps it nearly as close as Georgia did in that scenario either. Um, at some point, you have to sit back and realize, hey, there's a reason that he's at Wake Forest and these other players are at Georgia. He's at Georgia now, but there's a reason that he wasn't at Georgia from the jump, right?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think he has the raw ability to make plays in the backfield when things break down. He had almost 600 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns and showed that he was mobile, but I don't think he's the quarterback of the future for the Bulldogs, and I don't think he's going to win a championship. But to me, it has less to do with Newman and more to do with the team around him. I mean, they're losing 10 of 11 starters on offense, and they have a new offensive coordinator, a new O-line coach, a quarterback that's moving from a less defensive-oriented conference. I mean, outside of Clemson, I don't think any of the defenses in the ACC really scare you. I mean, Miami's will this year, but they had to go in the transfer portal to do that. But I think he's mobile. I think he has the it factor, but I think he has questionable accuracy. You said he was right at above 60%. That ranked 8th in the ACC last year. I mean, and this isn't viewed as a deep quarterback conference. I mean, he ranked behind James Blackman from Florida State and Jaron Williams from Miami. Blackman got benched multiple times last year, and Jaron Williams just entered the transfer portal because he couldn't secure Miami's job. I mean, that's really bad. I mean, I don't think either of us are going to sit here and say Blackman or Williams are elite quarterbacks.
No, we sat here this past season and talked about how bad they were. I mean, we're not going to go back on our word. That's exactly every single time that came up. It wasn't a positive thing, right? I think it was always a pretty bad thing. Yeah.
Well, we had a whole rant halfway through the season about why Alex Hornbrook wasn't starting for Florida State over James Blackman. And This doesn't even include, he was second in the ACC in total interceptions with 11. He was 1 interception behind Bryce Perkins with 12. And Bryce Perkins had his accuracy issues as well.
I'm pretty sure every time we talked about Bryce Perkins, it was in a pretty bad light as well, other than this offseason when I named him one of the breakout players. Zach did not agree with me, by the way.
No, I didn't. I mean, he has the legs. He'd be a great running back, but I don't think he's a very good quarterback. And I mean, Jake Fromm, for all his struggles about he couldn't make the plays according to the experts, he never had a season above 7 interceptions. And that was his true freshman year when he was thrust into a role and still led that team to a national championship. Right. I think that is amazing. If there's one thing you can say about Fromm, he was accurate. He did not turn the ball over, and that is the opposite of what Newman is. And, so the thing about me is the reason I don't think Jamie Newman was the missing piece is because I don't think quarterback was the problem for Georgia and why they didn't win a championship. People forget Fromm threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in that loss to Bama in the SEC championship. It was not Jake Fromm's fault they lost that game. Jake Fromm was elite during that game. He did throw 2 interceptions in the national championship, but he also made the plays to get them to a 13-0 lead at halftime in the first place. My thing about this whole situation is, why isn't Kirby Smart and the defense not getting any blame for their loss? They allowed 21 unanswered points in the second half in that SEC championship loss to Bama when Jalen Hurts came in and won that game. Kirby Smart's defense was the one that allowed 26 points in the second half against Bama after the offense, took a 13-0 lead in the championship. He allowed over 350 yards passing against LSU this season in the SEC championship. That defense allowed 40 points in a loss to a 2-loss Auburn team in 2017, which almost kept them out of the playoffs. I think Kirby Smart's defense deserves a lot more blame than they're getting. I mean, I don't understand how this all falls on Fromm.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. I mean, there's a whole team around him. And like you said, I mean, if you look at the numbers, I mean, just plain numbers, you see that it shouldn't even fall a little bit on Fromm, right? Other than this past season, which may have been Jake Fromm's fault in some capacity. I mean, and I don't even think that was really his fault. That's a whole different conversation, but I'll get started on it. I don't think that they let Jake Fromm air the ball out nearly as much as they should have. I mean, he didn't. I don't know. They relied too heavily on other things, right?
I mean, to be fair, they let Jake Fromm in the Auburn game that I beat Auburn this season, 21-14. They let Jake Fromm throw one deep ball. Do you know what he did? He threw a 70-yard bomb for a score that pretty much sealed the game for Georgia. I
Right.
mean, Jake Fromm has the arm strength to make plays, but I agree with you. They tried to lean on Swift, and I mean, to be fair, when you have Nick Chubb, Deandre Swift, and Sony Michel in the backfield, it's kind of hard not to lean on the run game. But also got to ask you, I mean, where was the run game in the biggest games when it came down to it? I mean, Swift had 4 yards against LSU this year?
Okay, but I think we can both agree that LSU's defense was, at that point in the season, was, I mean, I don't want to say unstoppable. They were very good.
They were very good, but if you're DeAndre Swift and want to be a first-round pick, I need more than 4 yards for you. I need more than 4 yards for you. You should be able to get 4 yards automatically if you're a first-round pick in the NFL draft, because I don't think that LSU defense was not a top 3 defense in the SEC last year, and I think we've had that discussion, and they were not a top 3 defense in the SEC that year.
Right. And I mean, if you watch, I mean, play the SEC championship back like I have, because there's no sports on TV, so I've just been watching old games. Just play it back one time, and you'll see that Jake Fromm, I mean, his inaccuracy in that game was, I mean, I wasn't expecting it. You know, I was expecting Jake Fromm, and I saw Jake Fromm play last year, you know, and he wasn't very accurate. And I think that's part of the reason that they didn't rely on his arm as much as they should have.
To be fair,
LSU
though,
game,
LSU was smacking him, dude. Where was the offensive line in that game?
that's
They
true.
were in
Well,
they were in his throat from the go in that SEC championship game.
They were worried about their dads getting fingers stuck in folding chairs and such.
I've totally forgot about that, but that is very true. But you know, and I refer back to the Auburn loss in 17 when they got blown out. Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and DeAndre Swift combined for like 30 yards rushing in that game. How does that help your quarterback?
Yeah,
I mean,
you have to do something else.
I mean, that's ridiculous. And I get DeAndre Swift's great. That's our next topic. We'll get there in a second, you know, but I don't think I think Jake Fromm was a scapegoat, and I think moving forward, these Bulldog fans are gonna miss Jake Fromm more than they think they will. I think they see the talent of Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, and so they just like, oh, well, we have all these great running backs, so the thing we're missing is a quarterback, and you know, Kirby Smart is a defensive guru, so it can't be his defense's fault that we're not winning, even though down the stretch, Kirby Smart's defense got outplayed. I mean, they were getting smacked by Baker Mayfield in the Rose Bowl, and it took a miraculous comeback, because I think they were down like 30 something to 17 in the first half of that game. I mean, Baker Mayfield was making that defense look embarrassed coming forward, and if it wasn't for a blocked field goal by you know, I forgot which player blocked it, but I mean, it was a great block. I give him credit. I'm not taking that win away from Georgia, but if they're a blocked field goal away from never getting to the championship under Smart in the first place.
That's true.
I mean, I think I really think it was unfair how Jake Fromm got blamed for everything. I mean, he did have targets, but let's not forget that this year was his worst year. I don't think me and you are going to argue about that, because we can both agree that this year was terrible. But his top 3 wide receivers were on and off hurt all year. His biggest target, Lawrence Cager, was out for the final like 3 games. I mean, and George Pickens couldn't stay on the field because he kept getting suspended.
Dude, but could you imagine if he didn't get suspended? That would have been.
He might be. I mean, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith are really good. George Pickens might be the best wide receiver in the SEC this coming year, and Jamar Chase. Mad respect to him too, but George Pickens is a stud. I'm just here to say, I mean, I'm not a big Georgia fan, but George Pickens is something serious out there.
That's true. He's definitely, I mean, I don't think he dropped a pass that he was targeted with all year this year. Is that right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, he did get shut down in the SEC championship, but I think me and you can both say Derek Stingley might be the best defensive player in the SEC this upcoming year. I mean, he's definitely the best cornerback, and I really think Derek Stingley is a future top 10 pick, and I'm not going to hold George Pickens, you know, to that because Derek Stingley is elite, and he was elite from the second he stepped on campus. And when your top running back's giving you 4 yards and that defense can just sit back and double team and, focus on the pass, there's really nothing you could do, especially when you have the talent of Grant Delpit, Derek Stingley, and all these players that LSU had in that, back into that defense. I don't know if that falls all on George Pickens and Jake Fromm, to be completely honest with you.
Oh, you're right for sure.
I mean, we'll see, though. I think it's going to be interesting. I think Newman is a really good quarterback. I think he should have respect of SEC defenses. But my argument is quarterback wasn't the problem. Do I think that if everything falls right that Georgia can make a run? I think Newman's good enough to make a run with them, but the run game has to be there, and Kirby Smart has to have that defense make plays down the stretch. Because I think we both watched the South Carolina game. We covered that on the podcast. That defense wasn't great down the stretch against South Carolina. That South Carolina was down to its third-string quarterback, and they were still letting South Carolina get down the field and score.
Absolutely, for sure.
Not a good look. But, guys, so I kind of highlighted it. We're going to move on to Deandre Swift and the stable of running backs that are in this draft class. So we've been releasing our positional rankings for the upcoming 2020 NFL Draft. It's set to begin on April 23rd in Las Vegas, Nevada. We will see if that stays. The NFL says they're going to work to keep that date the same, whether that means remotely or whatever it may hold. The draft should be happening. Many experts seem to be torn between a few different candidates that all have potentials to be centerpieces of NFL offenses moving forward. DeAndre Swift out of Georgia, J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State, and Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin seem to be the top 3 consensus running backs across major platforms that rank this draft class. The class is extremely deep, and experts seem to agree that there are steals deep in this draft at the running back position. Brandon, you had J.K. Dobbins ranked as your number 1 running back in this draft class. So why is that, and what makes him so special? And who is an underrated player in this class that you think could fall to day 2 or 3 that could really shine at the next level?
Ooh, that's tough. The player that's going to fall is going to get me. But J.K. Dobbins, obviously, I mean, if you watched him play last season, you know how special this guy really was. And it's a shame. I don't think either one of us had him as a breakout player in the Big Ten. I don't even know if we did a Big Ten recap actually. So that's
I don't think we actually did.
Yeah, so that's probably why. But I mean, this guy. I mean, look at his stats. He had 301 carries this season for 2,003 yards. That almost doubles what he had last season. He had 1,053 yards last season. He had 21 touchdowns this season. That is more than he combined for his first 2 seasons. If you watched him play, I mean, he's not this dual threat running back that you want to see in the NFL today. He's not the guy who's going to go out and catch passes, even though he can. He's just not the guy that is often targeted for that type of thing. He only had 23 receptions this season with 2 touchdowns, which is pretty good still. But he's not the guy that you're going to be worried about going out of the backfield or playing slot receiver. He's no Christian McCaffrey is what I'm getting at. But what he is he's a powerful running back. He's a quick running back. He's a guy that's going to get – he's a guy who's going to get almost – I mean, in the NFL, I would say closer to maybe 4 or 5 yards a carry. He had 7 yards a carry this past season. He's averaged 7 yards a carry for 2 seasons out of his 3-year career in college. I think he's a force that I don't want to say unstoppable, but he's going to be – some NFL team is going to be very lucky to have him in their backfield this upcoming season. He's a guy that is going to be able to put the offense, I think, on his shoulders and just bring them down the field. Maybe not win a ton of games, but he's definitely going to do his job, just depending on where he falls to, I guess. I can't remember where he's projected to go right now in the mock drafts. There's just been so many of them. But he's projected to be a top 10 pick. And, it may be a situation. I don't want to put him on this platform because I don't think he's even close to as good as Saquon Barkley is, but he plays similarly, in my opinion. I think that's a good comparison for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that. I mean, Dobbins was number 2 on my list, but I still have some questions about him. I've ranked Jonathan Taylor as my number 1 running back, and the reason that I think he gets the nod over Dobbins is that he's been more consistent and more durable than Dobbins has throughout his career. Taylor been the main starter for all 3 years in Wisconsin, and he's put up 1,900 or more yards every season and has averaged 6 or more yards per touch every season for 3 years. He is number 6 on the NCAA's list of all-time rushing yards. The thing about Dobbins, man, I mean, Dobbins and Taylor tied this season with 2,003 yards rushing. That's crazy that they hit on that exact number, but I've seen weirder things. Dobbins did lead the Big Ten in rushing touchdowns, though. I think Dobbins has the build to be dangerous in the NFL, but he really this might be a weak comparison because they went to the same school, whatever. But he reminds me so much of Ezekiel Elliott. He is scary like that. They have similar builds, about 5'10", 5'11", 220, 230. But the thing about Dobbins is I think he may be more explosive than Elliott was. Elliott, as he's gotten into his NFL career, has become less and less explosive. And I think Dobbins has potential to be just as good as Zeke moving forward in the NFL. But I'm still going to go with Taylor here, man. I mean, we haven't seen a running back put up these consistent numbers in a long time. And he did it on a less talented team than Dobbins had. I mean, right. I mean, when you put up over 2,000 yards for 2 straight years and you were less than 100 yards away from having 2,000 yards all 3 years of your career, that is almost impossibly good, in my opinion. And this year, Taylor became more of a receiving back. He had 5 receiving touchdowns this year after not putting up any his first 2 years. I don't think we're going to sleep on the Wisconsin offensive line, but I think the Ohio State offense had more weapons to build around. So the defenses couldn't focus on Dobbins as much as they could Taylor. I mean, I don't think we could compare Justin Fields and Jack Cohen and who defenses feared more, because I think everyone who's listening and Brandon knows the answer to that. Surefirely, it is Justin Fields. And I mean, I think a running back that me and Brandon have some questions about, but he's getting a lot of love from a lot of scouts, is Deandre Swift. And for me, I think he's the biggest question mark in terms of production. He never seemed to fully carve out his role in Athens. Yes, that could be because of Nick Chubb or Sony Michel, but even his senior season, he only had about 1,200 yards, and I really didn't love his game. He's probably one of the more explosive backs in the class. I'll give him that, but I don't think he's an every down back in the NFL. I really don't see him being the centerpiece of an offense where you can give it to him down 1 through 3 and trust him to do it. I think UGA did try to lean on him, but he didn't. I don't know. I don't think he did enough to put him above Dobbins or Taylor for me. I think UGA had probably one of the more dominant offensive lines out of all these running backs that we're talking about here, and a quarterback that defenses will probably pay some of the most attention to. I think you could put Fromm above Jack Cohen in terms of production and defensive awareness on that, but Swift never seemed to dominate. I saw games where Dobbins and Taylor dominated the game. I mean, if you watched Michigan, Wisconsin this year, you said, "Oh, who is that number 23?" For Wisconsin, because that dude is special. You watch Dobbins in the first half against Clemson, you're like, that guy is for real. That dude is a future NFL player. Swift, only a handful of games you could say that, in my opinion. And I think that's why Swift, to me, is the most overrated back in this draft class.
Yeah, and we both watched him play this past season. We've seen him over his career, and he's a very good running back. But I don't think he's on the same level as like a Sony Michel or a Nick Chubb, and definitely not a Todd Gurley. So I think that he has this hype built up around him because of those players, because he's a Georgia running back. But he's not going to perform at the same capacity. There's just no way, right?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he has the. I don't know if I should say this. This probably piss off some of our Georgia fans that listen, but I don't think Deandre Swift is going to play running back in the NFL.
Really?
I don't. He's 5'9", 220. I think he's going to be more of like an outside weapon. I think they're going to move him to a receiver. I really do.
Wow.
They're going to move him to a receiver / type, like a specialized, maybe like wing back. I don't see him being an every down back. I really don't. He doesn't have the consistency for it. I don't think he's built for that. I think they're going to use him kind of like the Patriots use James White.
Okay.
And I don't see him being like a Zeke Elliott or a Christian McCaffrey or anything like that. I see him being a specialized player that you bring in certain situations. I think J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor are every down backs that you can base your offense around every single week. I don't see that from DeAndre Swift. And especially if he goes to a team without a good offensive line, because, I mean, he had some of the best offensive linemen in the country at Georgia and still couldn't produce like Dobbins or Taylor. I don't see, he just doesn't have that it factor to me. He doesn't pop off the screen to me. I don't know if I'm missing something. I've watched film on this kid. I've seen him play a lot. I watch a lot of SEC football, being from the South. I mean, I really, I don't know about him. I have a lot of questions. All right, so before I put Brandon on the spot, I'll go ahead and give my dark horse. I've seen one outlet put him above where I had him. I had him at number 3 on my list. I think he's grossly underrated. I think he could be the best back in this draft. Mine is Zach Moss out of Utah. I think Zach Moss is going to be the best running back that no one talks about in this draft. He led the Pac-12 in rushing this past season and had the least amount of help, in my opinion. Wisconsin has multiple O-linemen going in the draft, and same for Ohio State and UGA. They are legendary, getting 5 and 4 stars at every position. I looked it up. All of Utah's offensive linemen last season were composite 3 stars or lower, and all but one person on that offensive line was ranked outside the top of 1,000 players in their draft class. I mean, their recruiting class. Do you think UGA or Ohio State or Wisconsin had a one player ranked outside the top 1,000 starting on that offensive line?
No, there's no
way. Not even a single chance, guys. And so Moss is built for this too. He's built very similar to J.K. Dobbins. He's about 5'10", 225, 230. And I know a lot of you guys probably didn't watch Utah play last year. Me and Brandon did. I think Brandon will agree with me on this. His biggest positive to me is his physicality. Man, he is about that contact. He's about that life. And if you're in the hole when he arrives, you aren't going to be there next time, because he is going to put his head in your chest and you are going to move. He's not the fastest. He runs about a 4.6, but he has the quickness and the explosive first step to be a starting NFL running back. And, you know, we love pro comparisons here. And my pro comparison for Zach Moss is Kareem Hunt. Okay. They're built similarly. Kareem Hunt also dropped in the draft because of competition, other stuff. But Moss has the same explosiveness, same vision, same physicality that Kareem Hunt has. And we saw what Kareem Hunt was doing at the Chiefs his rookie year. Moss is that similar guy who's going to come out of nowhere in this NFL season. And Moss is going to be the best or one of the best running backs in this class. And I will put anything you guys want on that. And the biggest positive, his pro comparison is Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt had discipline issues coming out of college. Nothing like that on Zach Moss. Nothing but positives on this kid. He's one of the most highly respected kids coming out of Utah, coming out of college in general. Good grades, no issues. Coaches, teammates love this kid. I think Zach Moss is superbly underrated, and I love this kid so much. And I almost put him over J.K. Dobbins in my rankings. But J.K. Dobbins is extremely explosive. But I think Zach Moss is absolutely the most underrated player in this draft.
Okay. I'm going to take a little bit of a different route. The way I understood it was we were going with a true dark horse because people talked about Zach Moss. So good job, Zach, on the cop-out. But
go ahead. How's that a cop-out? People are projecting him to fall to day 2 or 3 in the draft.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with it was tough for me. I had a couple in mind. I'm going to have to stick with Joshua Kelly out of UCLA. While he didn't have super impressive numbers, watching him play, watching him perform, after the season ended this year, I mean, this kid has done outstanding things. I mean, I was at the Senior Bowl all week, and I've already talked about this kid plenty because he was just doing an outstanding job all around there. He looks like an NFL running back to me. He looks like the kind of NFL running back that, like I said, he's not going to fit in the same kind of Christian McCaffrey role where he's going to roll out, he's going to go out for passes, he's going to play slot receiver. But he's the kind of kid who's going to go out there. I mean, on the season, he had over 1,000 rushing yards with UCLA. I mean, he's one of the reasons this UCLA team performed much better than a lot of people expected them to this season.
Don't forget he had to split time, so his stats could have been even
Oh
more
yeah,
crazy because they also had a scrambling quarterback in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I mean, they ran a lot of stuff with him, so if he would have been in a more pro-style offense, this dude could have easily hit the 2,000-yard mark.
right, for sure. And I mean, it was just I was looking back at my notes because I had to find somebody who I thought was going to be a dark horse, going to have a great he's gonna do far better than most of the experts, most of the I mean even most of the scouts think he's going to do. And I was just looking back at my notes because I got caught up in the moment while I was at the Senior Bowl, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start taking notes like a scout would because I was talking to scouts and I was hearing the way they were talking. And so, I mean, the things I said about Gibson, I was like, well, he finishes runs, he never goes down on first contact, he finds holes, he can make the cuts he needs to, and it was just, I mean, there were no negatives. I mean, whereas you look at guys like Benjamin, I had negatives for him. Uh, I mean, even guys like Antonio Gibson, who, more of a wide receiver, but played a lot of time at running back, has been worked out at running back a ton this offseason before the draft. I've got negatives for all these guys. I couldn't find a negative for Joshua Kelly. I mean, this guy's the real deal. And I think that if he were put into a different situation, like Zach said, where he didn't have to split time, he could have. I mean, he only had 229 touches this year. You give him those 300 plus touches like J.K. Dobbins had, and we don't know what he would have done, right? I mean, this kid is an absolute machine. I think whoever he falls to is going to be extremely lucky. I mean, and he's going to be a kid that falls to day 2, day 3. He's going to be around 4 or 5 pick more than likely. So he's going to be a great value pick for anyone who can get their hands on him.
Yeah, I really like that pick. And, I just want to give one shout out. Brandon kind of called me out. My number 2 player is probably truly underrated. I think Brandon agrees. We've talked about this kid briefly, so we'll just kind of throw him in here. LaMichael Piron out of Florida is going to be a stud as well. I don't think he's going to be a top back in this class, but he'll be a serviceable starter in my opinion. I don't think he has I think he's a consistent pick. Let me put it like that. He doesn't have an extremely high ceiling, but he also doesn't have an extremely low floor. He's going to be right in the middle. I think he could be a serviceable back in the NFL. And if I had to pick a pro comparison for him, this is tough. I'll put myself on the spot here. I'm going to go with Kenyan Drake. I think he's a similar Kenyan Drake type guy. He's going to have to find an offense that features him in the correct way. Let's just go with that. He has a pretty nice set of hands that can catch, make plays out in space like Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake struggled at the Dolphins. They were utilizing him in the wrong fashion. He goes to the Cardinals, gets in a spread type attack that gets him out in space. Kenyan Drake was one of the best running backs in the country last season when he got traded. Piron just needs a system that will help him out on that. He's a playmaker. He has the speed, physicality, the hands to be something serious, but I still think some of these other backs have to be above him, in my opinion. But I think you can't go wrong with drafting him. I mean, I think he's a great value for a 4th, 5th round pick. Like I think both of us can agree he's going to go somewhere probably around there.
Yeah, I agree with you. He was also on my list. He would have been my 2nd pick because, like I've been saying about most of these running backs so far, they don't really fit into that, that more modern running back role where they're also, they could also function as a slot receiver. I mean, you see Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara coming out and doing that type of thing. I think Michael Piron is a player that can fit into that sort of role. If he gets in the right offense with the right coaches who know how to use him the right way, he's going to be a serious threat in the NFL.
Yeah, because he's focused too. I mean, you've heard nothing bad come from this kid in Florida, and he was at a program where a lot of kids do have a lot of problems. There's a lot of news coming out about Florida players getting in trouble. If he can survive being in Gainesville for all these years and not get in any trouble, the kid's character has to be high. So,
and we can't forget. I mean, he was there during one of the big scandals in Florida. Yep. I mean, it wasn't It's not Aaron Hernandez and Cam Newton causing trouble, but it was players selling their team Jordans. I mean, they were given these pair of Jordan sneakers, and they were selling them. Michael P. Ryan didn't get caught up in that, and I think that's a great sign. I mean, or really for anyone who didn't get caught up in that, that's a great sign for them. But especially Michael P. Ryan with the type of talent he has.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we'll move on. Last topic of the day. We're going to talk Drake Maye, one of the best quarterbacks in the next recruiting class, flipping from Alabama to UNC. Most experts thought Nick Saban struck gold with another big commitment by four-star quarterback Drake Maye last July. Maye stands at 6'4" and is a top 35 prospect for this next recruiting class, according to 247 Sports. Maye's brother is Luke Maye, the UNC standout who was on the last UNC team to win a national championship in basketball a few years ago. Maye put up over 3,500 yards last season and threw 50 touchdowns and, just wait, only 2 interceptions last season for his high school. He is a candidate for a 5th star in the upcoming new updated 247 rankings. And Maye flipped his commitment last week to the Tar Heels and continued Mack Brown's hot streak on the recruiting trail. Brandon, does this development show coaches across the country are not as intimidated by Saban anymore? And what does this say about what Mack Brown is building in Chapel Hill?
Honestly, I don't see this as like a slap in the face to Alabama. I see this more as a kid who is very talented, right? I mean, he's a 4-star quarterback right now. And that's, obviously he's a junior still in high school. He's the class of 2021, so he won't even be in college until next year. But he obviously he made his commit to UNC on March 6th after committing to Alabama last July. And I think this is more of a case of, hey, would I rather drive? He's from Charlotte, North Carolina, by the way. Would I rather go 2 hours up the road to go to school where my family already has somewhat of a legacy? Probably go to the school where you've been a fan of your entire life. You probably grew up a UNC fan, right? I mean, if you're from Charlotte, rather than driving 7 hours to live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And yeah, you're going to play for the University of Alabama. That's impressive and everything. But you're also going to have a lot of competition. I mean, Bryce Young alone, he's going to be there for probably 2 of the years at least that you're there. So you're going to have 1 or 2 seasons to show out after that, maybe 3 if you redshirt. But would you rather go somewhere like UNC? I understand Sam Howell's there, and he's very good, and this kid's not going to start over Sam Howell unless something just goes drastically wrong. But
and
Sam Howell came in this past season, so this kid's going to have, if he takes his red shirt, he's going to have 3 full seasons, at least, where he can just show out, where he can, make his own legacy, right?
Yeah, I think so. And, I agree with you. I still think Saban has major pull on many recruits in the country. And why wouldn't he? He's the greatest coach of all time. And who wouldn't want to go play for Nick Saban? If I was a player, I grew up a diehard Auburn fan. If Nick Saban's calling the phone, your boy is listening. I don't think if you're someone who loves college football and you say if you were a recruit you wouldn't listen to Nick Saban, you're lying.
Yeah, right.
You are absolutely lying. And, I agree with you. I think this says more about not just, this kid, but freshmen in general, seeing that their ability to start immediately is becoming more and more evident. If you think back to when we were younger, you almost never saw true freshmen starting at quarterback in the NCAA. That was just not something that happened very often. And I think you see it more and more often. You saw Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence. And just there's countless more. I don't feel like naming out every single true freshman starting quarterback of all time. But, they don't want to sit the bench for 3 years. At Alabama, you have Mac Jones, Bryce Young, you have Paul Bryant's great-grandson. You have Tua's little brother. Who wants to walk in that quarterback room and sit the bench for 3 years when you're a borderline 5-star prospect and you just got done throwing 50 touchdowns and 2 interceptions? So the kid's talented. I don't care if this dude played dummies. Like, I'm talking about just standalone, like, dummies where they don't move to throw 50 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. You got to be talented.
That's
I
definitely
mean,
not what I thought you were talking about when you said dummies. I thought you
no,
were
no,
just
no,
talking
no,
about
no, no,
idiots. Yeah, this kid's just playing
no,
idiots out there. He's just
no.
playing the
Dude,
dumbest guys alive.
dude, you could put a Pop Warner team out there. You're going to throw 1 interception eventually, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, 50 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. That's outrageous. Uh,
Yeah,
But, these freshmen are coming in with high expectations. And like I said, Tuscaloosa is so deep, man. I mean, there are 5 stars that sometimes don't get to see the field
that's
because
true.
it's because they recruit other 5 stars that are better than those past 5 stars. I mean, we're seeing the same thing at Clemson starting to happen. Um, you know, and I think Sam Howell is going to be a huge wild card because I think May one either thinks he can compete with Sam Howell, which is outrageous in my opinion, because we all know how much I like Sam Howell, or two, he knows that Sam Howell is only there for 3 years.
Right.
Because I don't think he does this if he thinks Sam Howell is staying for all 4 years. I mean, I don't think May minds redshirting 1 year, but I don't think he's going to sit the bench for much longer. And May has the opportunity to be one of the best quarterbacks in this next recruiting class. I mean, guys, I know a lot of you guys probably aren't paying attention to recruiting as much as, some people in the media are. Go watch the film on this kid. This kid is elite. I'm talking about elite, guys. This guy is going to be outrageous at the next level. And I agree with you. I also think this speaks more on what Mac Brown is building in Chapel Hill rather than what Nick Saban isn't building in Tuscaloosa. I mean, how many recruits has he already gotten that would never actually consider UNC as a football destination? I would say countless, right?
Right.
I mean, and what he's doing is he is building a wall around North Carolina. He's getting the recruits from North Carolina that would go to South Carolina, that would go to Georgia, that would go to Alabama, that would go to, let's just say, Clemson. I mean, he's getting those players to stay. I mean, he's got May, the number 3 recruit in North Carolina. He's got another kid, number 5 recruit in the country, Blackwell, the number 6 recruit in the country. He's got multiple top 10 recruits from his state, and he did it last year too, with multiple 4-star players who would have probably left if Mac Brown wasn't at UNC. And guys, it's a really, really early, I know, but the Tar Heels have the number 4, the 4th ranked recruiting class for next season already.
Yeah. Well,
I don't care.
People forget how much Zach loves UNC.
I'm not a huge USC fan, but I'm impressed with what Mac Brown is doing. I mean, I don't care what it is. There's a lot of recruits that have already committed. To have the number 4 recruiting class and you are the North Carolina Tar Heels in football, that's impressive. If this was basketball, whatever, that's probably a disappointment to have the number 4 class. You should have 1 or 2, maybe 3 if Kentucky's on it. But I'm really impressed with what Mac Brown is doing here. And I think this is, we should be putting more praise on Mac Brown rather than focusing on, oh, he left Alabama. I think Nick Saban's still going to get talent. I mean, Brandon, would you put money on that Bama's probably still going to land one of the best quarterbacks in the next recruiting cycle?
Yeah, if I were a gambling man, I would do that.
Yeah, I'd put a lot of money on it because, but here's one thing I don't want to hear. While I was researching this topic, I saw this a lot. And as an Auburn fan, and I know Brandon, as an LSU fan, you're going to agree with this. And a lot of our listeners are going to agree with this because you guys know exactly what we're talking about. And even if you're from Michigan or whatever, Ohio or whatever, programs that do this. Yeah. I hear a lot of excuses that Bama is too good and they don't want this kid.
Oh, whatever.
I hate that. Literally, it makes my blood boil seeing that because, yeah, he's a 4-star, but how many 4-stars were Cam Newton was a 4-star? Kyler Murray was a 4-star for some recruiting services. I mean, there's multiple. Joe Burrow was. Come on, man. That's ridiculous. That just because he's like Bama's too good for a 5-star quarterback. I mean, Brandon. Outside of because Tua Tagovailoa was a 4-star, he wasn't even a 5-star.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I could name them, but here's the thing: He's a 4-star and he's a junior. Give him until the next updates on 247, on the next updates on the composite rankings. This kid's what is he? He's .97 what? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
9745. He's if he threw 50 touchdowns and 2 interceptions this season, if he does the same thing next season, this kid's a 5-star.
That kid might
I
be the
mean,
number one quarterback in the country if he does that again.
right.
And I mean, North Carolina is a state that has decent high school football. It's not like he's playing in Idaho. No, I mean, North
No.
Carolina has some talent, guys. Like, let's not. I mean, yeah, it might not be California or Georgia or Florida, but I would say North Carolina's up there. Let's not play stupid. And, this idea that, Bama's too good for a kid like this, like, come on, man. That's ridiculous. I mean, losing a recruit always hurts. But, I mean, if you had to say, hey, if we have Bryce Young at the starting quarterback, that's a 5-star. Would it not be nice to have a backup who throws for 50 touchdowns and 2 interceptions? I would take it. Sign me up. Where's the list? Because I wish Auburn had that as their backup. I don't even think Auburn has a backup quarterback right now. So, it's ridiculous. And this idea that some of these programs have this idea that if you're a 5-star, like that's it. That is, you are set for the College Football Hall of Fame. But I mean, go check out our website, thebluebloodspod.com. There's a thing called the biggest recruiting bust in the past decade. Brandon, what were there, 6 quarterbacks on that list?
Yeah, it was a lot.
That were all 5-stars. And guess what, guys? Just because he's from California and Bama got him, there were 3 quarterbacks from California on that list.
That's
like,
crazy.
get over it, man. And, I mean, you have to have depth. I mean, and what happens if, 2 of those players transfer? What if Mac Jones loses the starting job to Bryce Young? He's gone. Tua's little brother, Talua, is already talking about transferring. Then what? I didn't hear. So Bear Bryant's great grandson was a 4-star. I didn't hear anyone say, "Oh, he's a 4-star. We don't need him."
That's a fact.
I didn't hear one person say that. You want to know why? Because his last name was Bryant. That is the only reason y'all said that, and it pisses me off so much. I am shook about this because I see it, and this isn't just an indictment on Alabama. This is for Auburn fans, LSU fans, USC fans, Oregon fans, anything. I don't care if it's a 4-star, a 5-star, a 3-star. If he comes out and plays, that's all that matters to me, man. I just want a playmaker. And I mean, how many quarterbacks have we seen that were 2, 3-stars? How many just players in general have we seen dominate college football?
I mean, countless.
Honestly,
Countless.
Baker Mayfield walked on to 2 different schools and won the Heisman Trophy.
Right.
So yeah, okay. We've already had the argument about this. I hate the idea that everyone says Joe Burrow, no one wanted him, but if Joe Burrow is a 4-star quarterback, no one saw that coming, right? I mean, coming out of high school, no one said, you know what, Joe Burrow is going to set the record up for NCAA total offense his senior year. So people would have been like, hey, dude, why don't you just go sit over there because you're losing it. They would have put you.
We call that our dummy corner. Why don't you sit over there and then come back later?
I mean, it's just this is why I really like to pay attention to like what the experts are saying, even though they miss on a lot of stuff, but this stuff's impossible to predict. I mean, if you have someone who hits on, let's just say 60% of their prediction for these recruits, that's outstanding. I mean, you never know, man. I mean, there's coaching changes. There's players that don't fit the culture. There's players that don't mess with the system. I mean, there's so many other factors than just a player not being good enough. Because, I mean, he's a junior. So what? He's 17, and he's already 6'4". He's and he's the small brother, guys. His brother is an NBA is like an NBA player, like legit NBA player, and we're gonna and so he's the runt of the litter, and we're just like, we don't want him. He comes from an athletic family. Like his dad, I believe, played quarterback at North Carolina, right? Yeah, he was a all-state quarterback and played 3 different sports for UNC.
That's insane.
I mean, this idea that he's nothing is just, outrageous. And I mean, his pro comparison, according to 247, is Sam Bradford. Do you know what Sam Bradford did in college, Brandon?
It's pretty good.
He won the Heisman. It was the
That's
number
pretty
one
good.
pick. It was the number one pick in the NFL draft. Do you think UNC's taking a Heisman winner? I think they might have two because Sam Howell's going to win it eventually.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's great.
this just, I mean, Texas is probably kicking themselves that Mac Brown's not there anymore. I know Brandon hates Texas. Brandon's probably smiling right now because he loves this horns down thing. Dude, do you think they would trade, Mac Brown straight up for their coach right now?
They probably would.
Like Tom Herman would just be gone, right? You would have to think. And I don't know, man. I love it. Brandon loves it because Brandon hates Texas. But so this is the end of our episode, guys. We're trying to get your guys' mind off of everything going on in the country right now. So we are coming out major content. We're keeping our schedule. We even might have a little bit of extra content. We got time, right, Brandon?
If you're willing to pay.
Yeah, we're gonna set up a payment system for you guys, but we're bringing you guys content over this crazy time. We got stories lined up. There's still stuff to talk about. Good programs gonna still bring content to tune in, stay up to date with everything going on in college football. We're in the work with some more interviews with some big names, so stay tuned for that. Guys, if you haven't checked out the website, catch up on all our blogs if you need some reading time while you're just chilling. It is thebluebloodspod.com. All our old articles are on there. We're going to be coming out with some new ones. Me and Brandon got to find some stuff to do now. As you guys know, we have a lot of free time on our hands right now. But social media, guys, we're still going to keep up with our positional rankings too. Working on a mock draft for you guys as well. Instagram at _Blue Bloods, Twitter at _Blue Bloods, Facebook at the Blue Bloods Pod. You can find links to all our episodes on all our social media, our website. All the links are at the top of the homepage. You can click, you can listen anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, whatever you guys want. We got all the links up there. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you want to listen. Leave ratings. You guys have been doing great with that. Leave a review if you want. We really appreciate all you guys listening, and we will be back later this week with more episodes. But for right now, we out.